At 6:15 a.m., the port of Luga, Russia's largest gateway to the Baltic Sea, was silent. Fog clung to the water like smoke. Cranes stood motionless, and radar screens glowed empty green. Nothing moved. Nothing seemed wrong. And then everything changed. A blip appeared on the edge of the radar. Then another. And another. Within seconds, there were 15, moving fast, low, and silent. By the time the first alarms screamed across the base, it was already too late. 15 Ukrainian drones were racing straight toward a port the Kremlin once called untouchable, the kind of place Russian generals showed off as proof of their invincible air defense. But that morning, something unexpected happened. The sky over the Gulf of Finland turned into a battlefield where a few $35,000 drones humiliated weapons worth billions. In underground bunkers near Kiev, operators stared at flickering screens. Tiny white dots crawled across the Baltic Sea, each one carrying explosives and a mission. No one knew it yet, but this would become one of the most devastating strikes of the entire war. And the moment Russia's untouchable myth went up in flames. Before that could happen, though, those drones had to survive something no human pilot ever could. Because waiting ahead in the fog was the full power of Russia's coastal defenses. Long before sunrise, the mission began in silence. 15 UJ-26 Beaver drones lifted off from makeshift launch pads deep inside Ukraine. Each one was barely the size of a small car, built from fiberglass, carbon fiber, and raw determination. Their route stretched almost 1,000 kilometers across open water, radar traps, and freezing winds. To the human eye, they looked like seagulls, if you could see them at all. To Russian radar, they were ghosts. Every drone carried just enough fuel for one-way travel. The operators, young engineers turned digital pilots, worked inside rooms lit only by monitors. Every altitude change, every data link mattered. A single lost signal meant a drone gone forever. For hours, everything went perfectly. Engines steady, navigation flawless. The weather even helped, wrapping the swarm in fog that blinded Russian radar. Then, just after dawn, luck vanished. A patrol boat appeared through the haze, its crew unaware they were about to meet the future of warfare. Tracer rounds split the air, a 14.5-millimeter gun hammering lines of fire between the drones. Operators hundreds of kilometers away flinched instinctively. Then came 3 Igla-S missiles, fired blindly into the gray. One spun out of control and vanished into the sea. Another detonated mid-air. The third found its mark. A flash. Static. One drone gone. 14 kept going. Fuel gauges falling, batteries dropping. But the target was only 40 kilometers ahead. None of them knew that Russia's most advanced air defense system was already awake and watching. Far out on the coast, the S-400 gravestone radar had been tracking the formation for minutes. Now it locked on. The S-400 was Russia's crown jewel, a trillion-ruble fortress capable of striking targets hundreds of kilometers away. But these weren't jets. The Beaver's carbon fiber bodies reflected barely a fraction of radar energy. On the screens, they looked like birds. The operator fired anyway. 2 massive missiles leapt skyward, each costing millions and designed to kill stealth aircraft. The drones dove to wave height, skimming 10 meters above the sea. The missiles followed, but their fins stalled. They splashed into the Baltic uselessly. Cheers erupted in the Ukrainian bunker. Then new alarms sounded, smaller, faster missiles this time, with side thrusters capable of 90-degree turns. They found 2 drones and tore them apart, leaving clouds of carbon shrapnel that blinded Russian radar. 13 survivors broke formation, scattering into the mist. For the first time, the S-400 lost its lock completely. The invincible shield was blind, and the drones pressed forward. But Luga wasn't defenseless yet. Beneath the fog, 4 Pantsir S-1 batteries waited, their overlapping fields of fire forming what the Russians called the box. The Pantsir didn't bother with long-range precision. It killed up close, brutally, using missiles and twin 30mm cannons. When the first missiles streaked upward, the Ukrainians executed a maneuver known as the wagon wheel, spinning in a moving spiral that confused the missile's guidance. It missed. The gunner switched to manual, and the cannons opened up, firing 5,000 rounds per minute. He didn't aim. He filled the sky with metal. 4 drones entered that zone. Only 2 came out. 9 remained, battered but alive. For the operators, it was like watching a horror movie in real time. Grainy feeds, flashes of tracers, then static. Still, they pressed on. Inside the Russian command post, frustration mounted. Missiles worth millions gone, thousands of cannon shells fired. And yet the swarm refused to die. The order came. Activate Krasukha. Crews powered up a massive truck-mounted jammer hidden near the port. The air itself began to hiss with electromagnetic noise. Invisible energy swept across the horizon, hunting the frequencies that linked the drones to Ukraine. One by one, the video feeds dissolved into snow. Silence filled the bunker. The Krasukha had done its job, except the drones didn't fall. They switched to autonomous mode, flying on preloaded terrain maps instead of live commands. Each knew the shape of the coastline, every bridge and building stored in its memory. They were blind, but self-directed. Without live sensors, autonomy was risky. New construction wasn't on their maps. The first drone struck a crane that hadn't existed 6 months earlier. 2 more collided seconds later. Sparks, then silence. 6 remained. In Russia's control center, officers celebrated. The jammers were working. But in Ukraine, one operator leaned closer to a dead monitor and whispered, "They're still on course." The drones no longer needed instructions. They had coordinates burned into their systems. And the code didn't care if anyone was listening. They were flying on borrowed power, less than 20% battery left. The mission had become a race against time and physics. And now, even money was losing the fight. Each Russian missile cost millions. Each drone, a fraction of that. The arithmetic of war had flipped. The S-400 commander hesitated to fire another $2 million interceptor at a 35,000 target. Instead, he ordered the switch to old Zu-23 anti-aircraft guns, cheap, simple, and deadly only at close range. It was war fought like an accounting problem. Missiles for jets, bullets for drones. But bullets need eyes, and the fog was growing thicker by the minute. The Zu-23s hammered the sky anyway, tracers weaving bright lines through the gray. It was guesswork, firing where they thought the drones would be. One lucky burst shredded a drone mid-roll. Others sailed through untouched. 5 survivors kept flying. Each loss meant almost nothing to Ukraine's budget, but cost Russia another mountain of munitions. The economics were brutal. Millions spent to stop machines built in converted garages. Then nature joined the battle. The fog rolled in heavier, swallowing radar beams and scattering infrared light. Sensors, both human and mechanical, failed. GPS signals began to twist under electronic spoofing, fake coordinates overpowering real ones. 2 drones followed the ghost signals and dove straight into the sea. The rest switched to inertial navigation, gyroscopes and dead reckoning guiding them forward. Reliable for a while, but never perfect. Small errors grew. Operators watched only numbers now. Altitude, speed, battery life. Every command lagged 2 seconds behind reality. Steering felt like driving by memory. On the ground, Russian defenders fired into the fog. Helicopters hovered overhead, rotor wash clearing pockets of mist. Soldiers with Iglay launchers listened for engine buzzes, firing at sound. It was chaos, blind men fighting invisible enemies. Through it all, the surviving drones crept closer, scarred, shaking, and low on power. The operators back in Ukraine couldn't see what they were heading into, but they knew the coordinates, the cryogenic gas complex at Luga's heart. If even one made it through, it would be enough. The final drone approached alone. Its skin was pitted, its propellers chipped, and its battery flashed 6%. The operator stared at a dark screen showing only data lines. No video, no sound. He flew by instinct, imagining where the drone would be when his commands arrived 2 seconds late. Then, for an instant, the fog parted. A glimpse of metal columns, pipes, and heat signatures colder than ice. The cryogenic processor, storing methane at -163 degrees. He nosed the drone down and began the dive. Below, defenders panicked. The facility's safety systems detected the incoming threat and automatically vented gas to prevent an explosion, flooding the air with flammable vapor. The perfect fuel-air mix. The drone's thermite warhead armed itself, a simple mechanical trigger needing no signal. Shrapnel from anti-aircraft fire tore through its camera, cutting off the last bit of vision. The operator could only trust math now. Speed, distance, and fate. 40 meters. 20. 10. The motors died completely. But momentum carried it on. 40 kilograms of carbon and explosives glided silently through the mist. Impact came with a metallic crunch, and then light. A white-hot flare burst from the refinery's base as thermite burned through steel in seconds. Inside the processor, liquefied gas flashed into vapor, pressure racing through the pipes. The first explosion was small, almost gentle. The second tore the sky apart. A fireball climbed hundreds of meters into the air. The shockwave flattened fences and shattered glass across the port. Flames swallowed the horizon, turning the fog into a storm of orange and black. Gas tanks ruptured one after another in a chain reaction. A boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion so violent, satellites over the Baltic captured it. The fire burned for 6 days. Luga's untouchable port was gone. In Kiev, the operators stared at silent monitors. No signals, no telemetry, just stillness. Then one voice broke the silence. It hit. No cheers, just relief and exhaustion. Because this wasn't only a victory, it was a revelation. A handful of cheap drones had dismantled the myth of impenetrable defense. The message was clear. In modern warfare, the most dangerous weapon isn't the most expensive. It's the one the enemy underestimates. That morning over the Baltic, the future of war arrived in the shape of 15 small machines built in workshops and flown by engineers who refused to give up. Luga burned, and with it, the illusion that technology alone guarantees safety. Power no longer belonged to whoever had the biggest missiles, but to whoever could build the smallest ghosts, and send them where no one thought they could go. Because on that cold morning over Luga, the world's most advanced air defense met the future, and